All right, get ready, because today we are diving deep, deep into the world of contract law, and specifically how a casual promise, the kind you make every day, can actually become something you could take to court.
We're talking serious legal stuff.
Seriously serious. We're doing a deep dive into offer and acceptance, and I was going through some excerpts from a legal textbook you shared, fascinating stuff, and it got me thinking, we make agreements all the time, right? Even something as simple as haggling over a price at a flea market. At what point does that back and forth become a done deal, something legally binding?
You've just landed on a really, really critical concept in contract law, and that's this idea of mutual assent.
A mutual assent.
Sounds kind of formal, right?
It does.
But it basically means both sides are genuinely agreeing to the same terms.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. How do courts actually figure out if there was real agreement? Especially when nothing's in writing.
Yeah, especially because in everyday life, we're not drafting a formal contract every time we buy something, especially if it's like a vintage record player from someone.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of the objective standard comes in.
Yeah.
It's like imagine a judge putting on their reasonable person glasses.
Okay, I like that visual.
They're not trying to, read minds or anything. They're looking at what a reasonable person would understand based on what both sides said and did.
So it's not about some secret intention, but what their actions actually showed they were agreeing to, right?
Yeah, you got it. And to really illustrate this, let's look at this fascinating case, Cortine Seedco v. Abraham, which involves, believe it or not, a dispute over a whole carload of clover seed.
Clover seed. All right, you've got to tell me more. What happened with this clover seed drama?
So we've got a seller, right?
Okay.
And he sends a telegram, and it says, I'm asking 23 cents per pound. Now, to you, does that sound like an offer?
I am asking. Yeah, I think if someone told me they were asking a certain price for something, I'd assume they were ready to sell it to me at that price.
Right. And the buyer in this case thought the same thing. He accepted, but then the seller, he backs out. And this is where it gets interesting.
So it went to court over a telegram about clover seed.
Oh yeah, a full-blown legal battle. The big question was whether that telegram, specifically that phrase, I am asking, counted as a real legally binding offer. And in the end,
what did they say?
The court actually decided that nope, based on the language, particularly that word asking and the context of the whole deal, it wasn't a formal offer.
Wait, so even though it sounded like an offer to most people, the court zeroed in on that one word to decide the whole case.
Exactly. And it really highlights how important every single word is in contract law, especially, when you think about businesses setting out price quotes and things like that, what you intend to say and what a court legally interprets can be totally different.
It's kind of like those late night infomercials, right? Call now. Operators are standing by. They make it sound like an amazing deal, but are they legally obligated to give that deal to every single person who calls?
Such a good point. And this is where we get into those default rules in contract law. Think of them like, the preset settings on your phone. They work fine for most situations, but you can always go in and customize them.
Right. You can change them if you need to.
Exactly. Contract law kind of comes with these built-in default rules to make agreements smoother, but both sides can always agree to something different if they want.
So it's not just knowing the rules, it's knowing how to use them, right? But what happens when we go from, clover seed, telegrams to online shopping and software licenses? How does offer and acceptance work in the digital world where everything moves so fast? I feel like every time I click download or purchase online, it's like I'm agreeing to this massive novel of terms and conditions and, makes those old school shrink wrap agreements, the ones you'd find inside a software box, seem kind of quaint.
It's true. The digital world, it throws a whole new wrench into this idea of offer and acceptance, right? Think about this case. Stepsaver Data Systems, Inc. v. Wise Technology.
Stepsaver, okay.
Yeah, it's a big one. Basically, this case looked at whether a software license tucked away inside the packaging was actually part of the deal, just because it was in the box.
So just opening the box means you've automatically agreed to, every single term and condition? It seems a little intense.
Right. And the court in Stepsaver thought so, too. They decided that just ripping open the package, that wasn't enough to show real agreement. The key was whether the seller made it super clear that accepting the software meant accepting those specific terms.
So it's like they're saying, look, we need to make sure you knew this was part of the deal, not that you just stumbled across it later.
Yes. And then fast forward a bit, we have Hill v. Gateway 2000. This one, it involved, a computer, A computer in a box.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here with the boxes.
Right. So in this case, the court decided that keeping the computer past the 30-day return window, that meant the buyer agreed to the terms, even if they never actually looked at the agreement itself.
Hold on, so even if you never hit I agree, just by, not sending the computer back, you could be bound by some contract you never even saw? That's kind of wild.
And that's the tricky thing about these rolling contracts that became so common online. You often don't agree to the fine print until after you've started using the thing, It makes you wonder where that clear moment of contract actually happens online.
And it feels like this is where the balance gets really tricky, right? Protecting businesses while also making sure people aren't blindsided by some hidden terms and conditions. It's a tough one. Where do we even start to draw that line?
And that's the million-dollar question that courts are grappling with more and more. On one hand, businesses, they need clear rules, right? They have to be able to operate and protect themselves. But on the other hand, consumers, we deserve transparency and fairness. It all comes down to finding that middle ground.
So we've got those shrink wrap agreements hiding in boxes, but then there's a whole other beast. Those click wrap agreements online where you're like frantically clicking boxes just to download something.
Oh, tell me about it.
Because honestly, I don't always read those super long terms and conditions. Does just clicking I agree actually mean I've agreed to every little thing, especially when it's like buried somewhere on a website?
Yeah, and that's a huge issue, right? It's one thing to find a contract tucked in a box. It's a whole other thing to be navigating this online maze of terms and conditions.
It really is.
And courts are starting to realize that in the online world, this idea of consent, it needs to be more than just a click. They're looking at whether the actual website design is fair. Like, are the terms easy to find? Is the language clear? Did the user actually have a real chance to read and understand everything before clicking?
So it's like they're saying, hey, just because you can hide a contract in the digital world doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. The law is playing catch up with technology, right?
Right.
We've gone from shaking hands and signing our names to clicks and swipes. But the core of contract law, that idea of a real meeting of the minds, of genuine agreement, that still matters.
It's a whole new world. So we've covered a lot from clover seed to the wild world of online contracts. What are some key takeaways you think our listeners should remember as they, go out and face the world of contracts?
I think a big one is to remember Courtine seed. Words matter, the context, everything matters. What you might think is a casual agreement could be seen totally differently by a court. So be super clear about what you're agreeing to and when in doubt.
Don't be afraid to get it in writing.
Exactly. And definitely don't just blindly click I agree online. Remember Hill v. Gateway. Even doing nothing, like not returning something, can be seen as acceptance. Read those terms and conditions, especially for online stuff.
Especially for online stuff where things move so fast.
It's true. And I think another good takeaway is that contract law, it's not stuck in the past. It's always changing, adapting to new situations, new technologies. What flies today might not fly tomorrow.
It's like the legal system's always trying to keep up.
Right. And those default rules we talked about, they give us a starting point, but they're open to interpretation.
And they change as society and technology change. This has been such an interesting deep dive. We've explored how classic contract law ideas are being challenged by the digital age, How do we even define agreement when everything's a click or a swipe away?
It's definitely something to think about.
For sure. So next time you're about to make a deal, whether it's for a vintage record player at a flea market or the latest software online, think back to these cases and what they represent. Clarity, fairness, and a little bit of caution never hurts. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, happy bargaining, everyone.